Good morning, everyone. This is Julie McDonald with Microcom Technologies, and I would like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with Grandstream. Today's host is Phil Bowers, and he'll be presenting. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to submit them in the question box, and Phil will answer them at the end of today's presentation. Phil, I'm finished for now, so please go ahead and take it over.
All right, thanks, Julie, and thanks, everybody, for being with us here today. My name is Phil Bowers. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager here at Grandstream. Today's webinar, like some other recent webinars that many of you have probably attended, that we've held with Microcom, is about our GWN series of Wi-Fi access points and routers. Now, in the previous times we've covered this topic in a webinar, I've pretty much only told you about one of our access points and given you a sneak peek on one of our routers. Today we're going to cover 3 different devices, so the GWN 7610 we've talked about previously, as well as 2 new devices you will see this month, our GWN 7600 Wi-Fi access point and our GWN 7000 router, which will be our first router. So basically, throughout the webinar, I'll be telling you about kind of some high-level stuff of these products. Let me just move on to the next slide, which has a little sample agenda on it. I'm going to give you a quick little introduction, then we're going to go through just quick setup, some of the options. One of the best things about all of these devices is how quick and easy they are to set up and manage because of the controller that is built into all of these devices, not just the router, but the access points too. We'll quickly go through system installation and deployment architecture. There I'm mainly going to tell you about that built-in controller, and then we'll wrap up with security features and best practices. I should be able to keep this to just about 25 minutes. All right, so let's go right into it. So, for those of you that may not have joined us for a webinar before, obviously here at Grandstream we are best known for and have been a major player in the unified communications marketplace for the last 15 years. We're one of the premier vendors of IP endpoints in the world, IP phones, gateways, ATAs, video conferencing, video surveillance, et cetera, et cetera. And in our mission to really begin to offer full business communication solutions to make it easier for our partners, their resellers, and end users to really have access to high-end business communications solutions, we have added we have expanded into the Wi-Fi and networking marketplace. It is probably going to be one of the biggest expansions of Grandstream that you have seen. We've added a lot of different products to our portfolio over the year, and this is going to be, this Wi-Fi networking is a major focus of ours going forward. So what these devices are, I'm going to start off by telling you about our 2 access points, and then I'll tell you about the router. So currently our GWN 7610, the one at the top there, is the model that's released. It is available through Microcom. That was released back in October of last year. And over the course of the next year, specifically this year, we will be releasing a variety of other Wi-Fi access points, both lower end, higher end, as well as outdoor weatherproof models. And we will also be releasing a variety of routers throughout the year, led by our GWN 7000. We'll have a variety of mid-range, low-end, and high-end routers. I'll get to that in a little bit. So starting with the access points, the 7610 is the one that's currently available, and the new one that will be available within the next couple of weeks, or by the end of the month, is the GWN 7600, a little bit of a lower-end device. And what really stands out about both of these is that they offer enterprise-grade features in an affordable, compact, quiet, and easy-to-manage access point. It doesn't require any licensing fees. It is incredibly quick and easy to set up. All of the hardware and software is included, as well as lifetime firmware updates for the entire lifetime of the product. So to go delve into each one of these specifically, we'll start with the 7610, which is the one that most of you probably already know about. This was the first device. This is currently available out on the market through Microcom. Came out in October. So the GWN 7610 is a mid-range access point. It offers 175-meter range, which is 575 feet in any direction, omnidirectional antennas on all of the GWN devices. The GWN 7610, as well as our other GWN device, which I'll tell you about in a second, offers 16 different SSIDs or networks per device. So each access point can offer 16 different networks with up to 16 different networks with with different potentially different login criteria for each one. The GWN 7610 is a little bit more of a little bit higher end than the 7600 I'm going to show you next, and that really comes down to the network speeds that you see here. When you're kind of tiering out access points in terms of what's low end, mid range, high end, it really is entirely based on this network speeds, the total throughput, which this device supports up to 1.75 gigabits per second. That's per second out to all of the devices connected to this Wi-Fi access point. Dual band Wi-Fi, you see 450 meg throughput for the 2.4 band and what is it? I gotta get rid of this little, there we go. And 1300 megs or 1.3 megs for the 5 gigahertz band. Controllerless management is the best thing about all of the devices I'm showing you here today. I will tell you more about this coming up. Basically, all of these devices, the access points and the routers, have controller software built in. You don't need to buy anything else. You don't need to use another device. You don't need to purchase software, download software. It's built into the web user interface. That means that all of our routers and access points can directly set up and manage any other GWN access points. This one supports up to 50, and again, I'll tell you more about this later on. 250 clients per access point with our GWN 7610, advanced security features, which I'm going to be telling you about later, and something important to note about our all GWN access points, they will work with any router. Any third-party router, doesn't have to be a Grandstream router. Obviously, at the moment, we don't even have a router that is available. It will be available soon, but all of our access points will work with any router. So now we move over, so that's the device you probably know about. Now we move over to the GWN 7600. This is, frankly, a little bit of a lower-end device than the 7610, and as I just told you, that is just because of the network speeds. If you look at it, it supports a little bit slower, about half a gig per second slower, not slower, but it supports half a gig per second less speed than the 7610. As I mentioned, usually in terms of considering something higher end than another access point comes down to just that supported network speed. Same thing as the GWN 7610, 16 SSIDs per device. The range is a little bit less, 10 meters less than the other device. It actually supports more clients, believe it or not. It supports 200 more clients, up to 450 clients per device. So this is, the 7600, I would say, is a great option for places where you might need to offer, connections to a lot of different clients, but, for instance, in a store or a coffee shop, or a hotel, you're not concerned with being able to offer the fastest possible speeds. 7600 is a great option for that. 7610, a little bit higher end, great for business environments, I would say, though the 7600 would be great for business environments as well. Again, I'll tell you about the controllerless management and the security later. As I already mentioned, all of our access points, both of the access points and all future ones will work with any router, not just our own. So just some hardware specs here. Let's see if there's anything that's worth calling out. These are just comparing the two devices so you can see. Next one, one difference is the 7600 is a Wave 2 access point. It allows the signal to actually, I believe, be a little bit stronger. You can Google Wave 2. And you'll find out more information, frankly, than if I sat here and tried to explain it to you. Anything else here? Nothing else really major to point out between the device, differentiate the devices other than what you saw. Both of them do have 2 gigabit Ethernet ports. In terms of auxiliary ports, you got a USB port, a reset pin, and a Kensington lock, which is actually an interesting feature that this supports, is that security Kensington lock that you see on some IP phones or some phones over the years. Again, 16, in terms of software, 16 networks or SSIDs for each one of these access points. And again, we'll talk about the security, the management later on. So you've seen me talk about this in some of the previous webinars. The next device that you're going to see, in addition to the 7600 released this month, is our GWN 7000. This is our first ever router that we're coming out with. I believe in the end we're going to have a whole variety of routers, at least 3, 4, lower end, high end, mid-range routers. This device I would consider to be a mid-range router. Has that built-in controller software which can set up and manage up to, I believe we're saying 300 plus of our access points. So the software built into the web user interface can set up, control, and manage up to 300 Grandstream access points and support up to 12,000 Wi-Fi clients. It gives you 7 gigabit ports. It offers VPN. It offers obviously hardware accelerated VPN, allow you to create not only Wi-Fi networks but VPN tunnels between 2 different physical locations. 1 million packets per second routing and 10 gigabits per second aggregate switching power, and that is sending that and receiving that from the access points that it is configured with. So 10 gigs per second, quite a haul there. It does offer you 3G, 4G, LTE wireless uplink via a USB dongle on the back. This can also be integrated with with network attached service. Wireless file sharing, wireless file saving, printer services, etc. So that is the GWN 7000, our multi-WAN gigabit VPN router. Check that out. That should be coming out before the end of March. So those are the 3 devices that we're focusing on here today. And now we're going to go through and tell you a little bit about most of the rest of the webinar, frankly, is going to focus on the access points. And not the router. As the router, obviously everyone pretty much knows what routers do. So in terms of setting up our access point, the devices can be either mounted on a sidewall, on a ceiling. As I told you earlier, all of our access points have omnidirectional antennas built into them, so it'll send the signal in any direction. Doesn't necessarily have to be mounted only on a ceiling or only on a sidewall. It can be mounted in either direction. What do we got here? Actually, I guess we're saying ceiling mount is recommended for optimal coverage performance. Although, as I did say, it is an omnidirectional microphone. I believe, if I'm remembering what our engineering team told me about this, pretty much with any access point, you're going to get a better signal when it is mounted on a ceiling than on a side wall. So in terms of actually beginning to set up these access points, which is for a lot of resellers obviously very important for you to understand. How do I set this device up? How do I manage it? When you first turn on or when you first connect the access point to your network, you can actually, we built a little tool that allows you to just take the MAC address of the device itself and log into its web user interface. You just take the MAC address from the actual unit. On any computer on that same network as your GWN access point, type in what it says down there, HTTPS, HTTPS://GWN, then type the MAC _, then type the MAC address, and then .local, and it will actually right there with just that information be able to log you into the web user interface of that access point from there. We also offer this GWN Discovery tool, which can basically do the same thing. It's downloadable from our website. You can go down and download it. It's a free tool, and it will just auto-discover from any PC on the same network as the access points. It will auto-discover those devices, give you MAC address, IP, all of that information. You can use that to manage each access point. And this is more, frankly, if you're adding these access points to third-party routers or virtual servers or whatnot. These last couple of instructions I've seen here, then obviously you would log into the web user interface, which you can use to, to edit, control each access point. And again, pretty much what I just showed you is if you're adding it to a third-party router, how to get access to that access point and how to go in and set it up. This next section on system installation and deployment architecture is going to focus on using the built-in controller on all of our access points and on our routers. So before we go into that, some just general high-level deployment scenarios of these devices and why, the features of them that make them great for a lot of different uses. We'll start off here with the small office. It gives you the ability to offer the same SSID and access credentials across all of the access points so that anyone can move from one floor to the next, from one side of the office to the other, from their desk to the conference room, without having to re-log in, without having to switch networks. You can just, move across, go from access point to access point. And if they have the same SSIDs and access credentials, it will just pass off from one access point to the other. So that is the common deployment scenario for small offices, and obviously our devices do support. You can have as many GWNs as you want. Each one has up to 16 networks, and you can share all 16 of those networks on every access point. You can share one or, really can be completely customized in terms of sharing networks from access point to access point, sharing login credentials, or just having it completely separate, which is what we get into here with the deployment example for a multi-floor office or for a larger office. The real example here is many different access points and many different SSIDs or many different networks, so that it gives you the ability to offer different networks in each area of your office on each floor. Dedicated network for your sales team, dedicated network for your marketing team, dedicated network for your support team, your security team, etc. And with the many options that these devices have, you can have the sales team network on every access point or on access points in areas where the sales team would be working, while also being able to offer up to 15 other different access points. You can get as creative or as customized as you want with creating those networks, with the login credentials for the networks, and sharing them between many different access points, or just using each access point to kind of put in its own, to offer a completely different set of networks. All right, so now we move up to the largest deployment example here: multiple branch offices or multiple. The best example here is an enterprise that has multiple locations. Our GWN access points, as well as obviously our router, does support VPN functionality. If you have existing VPN put in, our access points will work with that VPN and will allow you to access and share that VPN in each office. But our router does have, as I mentioned, VPN tunnel functionality to create VPN tunnels between multiple different physical locations, so that an enterprise can, between multiple physical locations, share resources, share networks, share access to the same data and information, etc. So those are three of the most common deployment scenarios. So now I'm going to tell you real quickly about setting up the device as a standalone access point, and then we're going to talk about the built-in control on all these devices. So obviously, our access points can be set up as standalone access points. You see a little bit of a graph here to give you the example, where basically, you're connecting it back to a router. The router doesn't have to be on the same location through the internet. So, maybe you have, let me see if I can get an example here. You have an office, and then you might have a warehouse somewhere else. If you have a router in your office, you can use our access points through the internet, connect it to a PoE switch locally, and connect it back to that router. And then you can share those access points or those networks with multiple different physical locations without having a router on site. So basically, real simply, just connecting to a router through the internet. And so now we get into the controllerless management. And this is, if you take away one thing from today, take away this controllerless management. What this means is, historically, a controller, whether it be a hardware or software, as you see in the example on the right, is needed to set up access points. The controller is generally is a piece of software or a device that you have to purchase separately, and that is the device that you have to use to set up and manage these access points. With some manufacturers, you actually, with these controllers, you can't manage groups of access points. You have to use the controller to basically set up and manage one access point at a time. What we have done is we've taken what the controller does, the functionality of those controllers, and we have built them into the web user interface for all of our GWN products. So what that allows you to do is, whether you have one of our access points or whether you have a router, you can use one access point, that's the best example here, or one router to set up and manage large amounts of Grandstream GWN access points. So I can literally use one access point to set up and manage entire networks of other access points without even needing to touch my router. in which case what we're doing here is setting up the main access point as the master of the network. Would be then obviously connected to your network then, and then that one access point would be able to set up, manage, and control, if it's a 7610, up to 50 other GWN access points. If it's a 7600, the controller built in that can control up to 30 other Grandstream GWN access points. As I mentioned to you earlier, the controller that's built into our router will allow you to set up and manage somewhere between 300-400 GWN access points. So there's no separate controller software. There's no separate controller hardware. It is built into the user interface for our access points or for our routers. It's especially great, frankly, if you already have a router, you already have a network set up, and you're just trying to add access points to it. Get one GWN 7610. As soon as you set it up, it will become the master on that network, and then you can deploy either 30 or 50 at the moment other access points that are all configured, set up, managed from that one user interface of your master access point. Here's just kind of another little definition, or another little visual example there. As you see, there's a GWN 7610 master in this example, and that master is able to basically control, in this case it shows 5 other access points. It could be up to 50 other access points. It extends networks to them, it extends configuration, it extends, obviously, the connection to the network, all of that, just through one master access point or route. I have this in here really just to show you a screenshot, to show you literally how easy it is to set up one device as the master. Actually, I want to see if I have another slide. Nope. All right, so literally to set up one device, one access point as the master, you literally log into it, connect it to your network. The first one you log into will become the master. You'll go through, you'll set up a couple of, give it a network names, create some initial network IDs, security, etc. And then literally all you have to do is go plug in other access points to the same network. On the screen to the left here, you'll see Discover Devices. That is a GWN that I'm trying to add. You see at the bottom, Paired Devices, I've already added one. You just click that little link icon. It will automatically pair the device with the master. And then you can, with each access point, you can customize the networks that they have access to or that they offer. Or you can also, obviously, share the same access or share the same networks or same common groups of networks across all of the access points that you have paired to your master. So not only can you set up these devices using this built-in controller all from one location, but it gives you, this is the user interface of a Wi-Fi access point. And look at all the information here that it's able to give you. Full information on the clients, not just for that specific access point, for all of the access points that are paired with that master access point. Tons of different information about the clients, their usage, blacklist, whitelist. You can manage and monitor incoming and outgoing traffic, and also manage clients and the connection that they have or get access or, block them from your network entirely. So not just a setup tool, but a, ongoing management tool built into all of our access points, but also the controller in our router, which just can control, frankly, more access points. This picture you see here, more information, again, that you can get from one access point set as the master on a network. If you're setting them up individually, you can also see all of this information. This is the home page of the user interface. You obviously see everything about it, aggregate usage, top users, top access point, radio resources. You can track access point usage, track client data usage, all from the user interface of one of our access points that can set up and manage, again, either 30 or 50 other access points, or if it's the router, up to 400 other access points. All right, getting to wrap up here, just going to go through security, which if you've been with us for any of the previous webinars, you've probably heard me talk about this, so we should be able to wrap this up pretty quickly here. In terms of our access point security features, just to summarize it real fast, as you see there, a unique security certificate per device. That is frankly a very beneficial thing that we offer, and something I was kind of surprised to find out that a lot of other access point manufacturers actually put the same security certificate on every basically extend the same security certificate from each access point to each Wi-Fi client. And so what that means in that example, with what a lot of other manufacturers do, if every Wi-Fi client connected to an access point has the same security certificate, somebody can hack into just one of those clients and use that information to hack into every other client on the network. Whereas we give a completely different, random, unique security certificate out to every Wi-Fi client connected to our GW and access points. And that basically means if somebody is able to, for whatever reason, hack into one device, that's all they can do is hack into one device. They can't get into your network. They can't get into your other clients. We also offer random default password for each access point, which is actually kind of, again, something that, surprised me to see that a lot of other Wi-Fi access point manufacturers do not do this. So basically with a lot of other access points, the password for the device itself is predictable, meaning that it's going to be the devices all, for example, one manufacturer, all of their default passwords are the exact MAC address of the device. Some manufacturers, it's literally admin when you first get it. We have a completely random default password for each access point, and it will prompt you as soon as, initially when it's first set up. Obviously, you can go through and change the passwords, but initially, each device will have a completely different password. Force web interface default password change on first login, pretty standard. Firmware protection, which I'll tell you about. Secure boot and runtime protection, which I'm also going to tell you about on an upcoming slide. Let me just grab a quick drink of water. All right. In terms of best practices for Wi-Fi security and encryption, what you see there are variety of, I believe there's 6 different Wi-Fi security encryption technologies there. All of these are supported by our Wi-Fi, all of our Wi-Fi access points. Kind of just gives you, in case you're looking for a strength order when you're setting up the device, this is what we recommend. WPA2 plus AES tends to be the strongest. And you'd follow that up with, pretty much the order in which you see there. But just the main thing we want to point out here are those 6 different Wi-Fi security encryption technologies featured by all of our access points. If you compare that to a lot of other access points from other manufacturers, you're going to find most of these, but not all of these. So it's noteworthy to mention that we offer all of these 6 major Wi-Fi security encryption. We talked about firmware protection earlier. I believe I only have 2 slides left here, so we are wrapping up. In terms of firmware protection, kind of describes it here on the slide better than I could really describe it to you. So basically all of our firmware for all of our access points and our routers actually is protected against hacking via a combination of encryption and digital signatures. Basically what this means is every layer of software within our access points or routers, every functionality, every layer of software, and there's many layers built into it, each has a completely different digital signature. And for the device is going to constantly keep in touch, each layer keeps in touch with the other layers. And if any one of those layers senses that it's being hacked, or if, feature or something has been changed that should not have been changed, basically the network will more or less shut itself down and prevent anyone from hacking into it. This also basically blocks anybody from hacking into your device, installing different or modified firmware that they could then use to further hack into it. So basically the thing to take away here is we have lots of different layers of software and features built into these devices. Each layer keeps in touch with each other layer through these digital signatures. And if any layer senses that anything else is wrong with that layer, if it may have been hacked, if something looks fishy, basically, it will shut itself down and prevent itself from being hacked into. And that's what it says on the bottom. The firmware file is encrypted so that hackers cannot get inside information on what is in the firmware, what's running on the device, by trying to reverse engineer the firmware itself. That's what this prevents. I believe this is the last slide that I have here. High-end network protection. We talked about These are 4 features, some of which we've already talked about, that frankly I haven't really seen supported on any other device, any other access points. We just talked about the anti-hacking or basically talks about the anti-hacking security, critical data and control lockdown. Basically, that kind of works hand in hand with that anti-hacking security or the firmware security we just talked about, where if the device senses that it's being hacked or something's been changed that should have been changed, the device will basically lock down and protect critical data of your network and of the devices on it so that it can't be, there's no outside connection that no one can hack into it. Then we obviously talked about unique security certificate per device and random default password per device. These are four things that we've gone above and beyond with our access points to add to just make them as secure as possible, especially when you're first setting them up before you've added any security features or setup to it. All right, so that is all I had for today. I pretty much covered our GWN's series of access points and routers. Big takeaways, again, the 7610 is currently available. It's our mid-range Wi-Fi access point. Currently available from Microcom, and within the next month you will see the release of our GWN 7600, a little bit of a lower end access point than the 7610, and the release of our GWN 7000 mid-range, our first router, mid-range router. And truly, again, the best thing, maybe the biggest takeaway about all these devices is that built-in controller software that's built into the user interface for all those devices, allows you to use one access point or one router to set up large networks of other devices, and literally all you need to do to manage, control that entire network is log into the one user interface of whatever you have set up as the master access point or your router. All right, so with that, I will open it up to Julie, and we can go through any questions.
Thank you, Phil, very much for that wonderful presentation, and it looks like we do have some questions for you. So I'm going to read them to you, and you're going to answer them for us. Here we go. First one says, for cross-selling purposes, what are the comparable models for Ubiquiti that are similar to the GWN 7610 and the GWN 7600?
Yeah, sure. Very good question. I'm going to try to remember the model number correctly off the top of my head. I believe it was Ubiquiti. The one that we've used in our comparison charts is I believe it's a Ubiquiti UAC Pro, something along those lines. I actually, if I could switch out of this, yeah, I can see if I can find the comparison chart to find the exact model, but I believe that's what it was. It was a Ubiquiti UAC or UAP Pro. After this webinar, I'll make a little kit that we have, an information kit about this product, which includes some comparison charts available to Microcom, and they can pass it on to you, and that will actually have the exact model, or I can look into it here in a second.
Thank you, Phil. I've got another question for you. And let's see, it says here, I see that the APs work with any router. Is that right out of the box, or do we need to configure anything depending on the router?
No, it should work completely right out of the box. Yeah, it should work completely right out of the box with any third-party routers. We've actually had these deployed in our office here in Boston, because we didn't have an access point until recently. We're actually, I believe, running them off of a Comcast router that we got from Comcast. So yeah, no, it should work with any router. Yeah, it should work with any router.
Great, thank you. Next question. 575 feet of range would be 272.5 in each direction from the center of the AP. Is that correct?
So my understanding of it is that it's 575 feet in any direction from the device itself. So it's not a radius, which I guess would be there. It is actually diameter in any direction from the device.
Thank you. The GWN 7000 works as a wireless AP too?
No. No, it does not. The GWN 7000 is just a router.
Thank you. Is the GUI customizable?
Is the GUI customizable? I don't believe so. Yeah. I don't believe so. I know that, like a lot of our other products, I think we make some type of API available for these. But in terms of the actual user interface, I do not believe it's customizable.
Thank you. I think I've got my last question here for you. So if John Q has his network hacked, then my network could be in jeopardy without a unique security certificate?
Indeed, that is correct. Well, so basically, it works more along the lines of if you have an access, if you're on the same access point as other people, and that access point offers the same exact security certificate for each Wi-Fi client, if that is the case, which a lot of others do, I told you earlier is that ours don't. Ours has a different security certificate for every single device. But if the access point you're using gives the same security certificate to every Wi-Fi client, somebody can hack into and get the security certificate on one, and they basically can then have full access to the network and every Wi-Fi client on it. And that is why we have built ours to offer a unique security certificate for every Wi-Fi client.
Thank you, Phil. I actually have one last question for you. Has Grandstream, without logo on it, of course, ever allowed one of their routers to be part of a hacking competition to strengthen security?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'll be honest, I haven't, here's what I'll say about this device. This device has been in development now for at least a year and a half, longer than that. The router specifically, we were actually supposed to release it, or plan to release it last year. We ended up pushing it off 6 months just to kind of make it even more comprehensive, to add some features, to add some security protection into it. So I frankly don't have, I can find out for you what our developers have done in terms of testing it, but I know it's been tested for at least a year now, so it should be very comprehensive in terms of that.
Thank you, Phil, for answering those questions, and also thank you, everyone, for attending today. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. And if anyone wishes to view any of the products mentioned or shown today, please visit us at www.microcom.us. Please remember this webinar presentation was recorded and it will be uploaded to our Microcom YouTube channel. So if you'd like to reference it again, you can certainly view it on YouTube. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day. And thank you, Phil. Appreciate your time.